On January 7th, Indiana legislators met to begin the first regular session of the 118th General Assembly. This was a budgetary session in which lawmakers spent 4 months at the State House to address a number of issues. In all, 295 bills made it through the legislative process and on to the governor for his final approval. Among other major issues before the General Assembly this session was crafting the new 2-year budget for the state, unprecedented voucher expansion, criminal code reform, gaming matters, and the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. As the headlining issue of the 2013 session, the budget contains proposals advocated for by Senate Democrats, including increased funding for local roads, additional resources to address backlogged maintenance and building projects for the state's public universities, and an appropriation for statewide programs for community corrections. However, Senate Democrats argue this budget did not produce results in the areas of combating a stubborn unemployment rate and fully supporting public education. In fact, public education could take another hit with the enactment of House Enrolled Act 1003, which exponentially expands the state's voucher program. By a narrow vote, lawmakers loosened the program's eligibility requirements and extended vouchers to all students who live in an attendance zone with a failing school, or those students whose sibling is already participating in the program. Senate Democrats opposed the expansion and pointed to the $113 million price tag associated with the current program as a reason for a more cautious approach. The state revenue used to pay for the voucher program is diverted directly from the state's public schools. This is the largest expansion of a voucher program in the nation. 5 years of study went into crafting comprehensive legislation to reform the state's sentencing laws, to lower the high cost of incarceration in the state by keeping the most violent offenders in prison, while also providing a better system of handling low-level offenders and drug abusers through community corrections and treatment programs. House Enrolled Act 1006 expands the current 4-level felony penalty classification system to a 6-level system. The proposal also requires felons to receive at least 75% of their sentences instead of 50% under current law. The act will ease sentencing for nonviolent offenders by proposing punishments other than incarceration. Early in the legislative process, Senate Democrats fought to take action on enacting the federal health care reform in a way that works for Hoosiers. With the possibility of creating 30,000 new jobs, injecting billions of federal dollars in local communities, and providing more than 400,000 uninsured working Hoosiers with medical services, this was a session priority. Efforts to pass legislation implementing the ACA in Indiana failed this session, but language was included in the budget that authorizes the governor, with Budget Committee review, to negotiate with the federal government to receive Medicaid block grants. Efforts to increase job opportunities and keep Indiana's gaming facilities competitive with surrounding states failed to pass this session. The proposal would have permitted existing riverboat gaming facilities to move inland to adjacent property, allowed the state's horse track racinos to employ live table games, and provided added flexibility for the use of promotional free play vouchers, among other provisions. Proponents argued that live table games could employ up to 600 new dealers around the state and cited new gaming facilities in Illinois, Ohio, and Michigan as good reason to enhance Indiana's gaming policies. Early on in Governor Pence's first term, he introduced an aggressive package of tax cuts that total $1 billion in revenue over the next 2 years. Those cuts, in the end, will provide minimal tax relief, about $50 a week to the average Hoosier taxpayer. Senate Democrats proposed redirecting this revenue to local road and school funding that was slashed in previous years. With the legislative process at an end, there is still work to be done at the State House. A number of summer study committees will convene in the interim to consider a variety of issues like school safety, Common Core standards, the effects of voucher expansion, criminal sentencing, and the expansion of mass transit in central Indiana. The Indiana General Assembly will reconvene in November.